It's the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Perez coming to you from Baltimore. On Monday, the FBI Director James Comey confirmed that his agency is currently investigating whether the Trump campaign and Russia colluded during the 2016 presidential election campaign. At the hearing, Comey asserted that Russian President Vladimir Putin wanted Trump to win the 2016 presidential elections. Let's hear what he had to say.
The conclusion that active measures were taken specifically to help President Trump's campaign. You had that by early December, you already had that conclusion?
Correct. That they wanted to hurt our democracy, hurt her, help him. I think all three we were confident in at least as early as December. Putin hated Secretary Clinton so much that the flip side of that coin was he had a clear preference for the person running against the person he hated so much.
Well, 2 months into the Trump presidency, we are still discussing this here in the U.S. If Trump was their man in the White House, are the Russian oligarchs now celebrating their victory? Now joining me to discuss this is Aleksandr Buzgalin. Aleksandr is professor of political economy at Moscow State University. He's also the editor of the independent Democratic Left magazine, Alternatives, and the author of many books, almost 20 of them. Thank you so much for joining me here, Aleksandr.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be with you every time when I can.
So, Aleksandr, and how is the media frenzy around the Trump administration's alleged connections to collaborating with Putin being received in Russia by way of electing Donald Trump?
Unfortunately or fortunately, I cannot give you any secret information because I'm not agent of KGB or anything like this. But as professor, I can say there is big noise around this so-called Russian influence on United States elections. And this noise is not a mistake or something accidental. It was profitable to create image of Russia as very, dangerous agent who has opportunity to influence on elections in any country. By the way, it was the same when we had the electoral campaign in Russia. It was a lot of speculations that United States and Central Intelligence Agency and so on and so far are trying to manipulate with the Russian public, with Russian elite, and this is an old story. Why I said that this is an important aspect of our internal and international politics, geopolitics, I think the same in the US. First, because it was created a lot of illusions around Trump in Russia. Not because Russians love Trump, it's not truth, but because it was created image of all other candidates as possible terrible persons who will start war against Russia. It looks like absolute lie, primitive lie, but it was such image, not direct impression, not direct expression, but it was image that alternative presidents of United States can be much more aggressive than Trump. I don't think so. I'm afraid that Trump is one of the most dangerous for Russia candidates who became president, and especially important aspect is right-wing conservative policy of Trump. In economic sphere, he is more liberal than US liberals, and the Russian mixture of conservative ideology, conservative foreign policy and internal policy on one hand, and very far-right liberal economic policy with market fetishism or market even fundamentalism, if I can say so. This is very dangerous mixture for United States and for Russia. And Trump is a person who is trying, from our point of view at least, to realize this strange mixture of conservatism with economic liberalism. And this is negative, but this is good excuse for Russia to do the same.
Right. Now, I guess one of the outcomes of the Trump election and this notion that Putin and the Russian oligarchs preferred to have Trump in office is that there is potential collaboration when it comes to trade policies, when it comes to lifting of the sanctions against Russia, with the possibility of being more collaborative when it comes to say, NATO encroaching on Russia. So there are many issues that one expects Trump to take a step, at least when it comes to NATO, take a step back and evaluate and maybe collaborate with the Russians. These are the things that they hope for, at least the Russian leadership and the Russian oligarchs are hoping for. Do you think any of this will come true, and is this consistent with what the Russian oligarchs might want?
Really, I am not sure that it's true. And I think that Trump presidency can be even more dangerous for Russia than Obama. And we didn't have, unfortunately, good relations during previous years. But let's look. Main idea of Trump is to increase military budget, the same we have in Russia. Main slogans of Trump is we don't want to have, I don't know, more intensive international cooperation, we must protect our economy. The same idea is typical for Russian leaders. But when we have similar politics of right-wing conservative politicians, it's dangerous because they can be partners, but they have similar ideology, and this is ideology of threat, and it can be really a threat for the world relations, for the peace in the world. I don't think that old style of globalization, neoliberal globalization, was better than protectionism. But protectionism, which is realized by right-wing conservative politicians and economic actors, is not better than globalization led by transnational corporations. It's two evils, and I cannot say what is better, what is worse. Both are worse.
Right. Now, the Russian economy is going through some turmoil now, whether it's a result of the sanctions or its own issues related to the slump in the oil markets. Now it's coming back. Are things improving, and are they in a better position to, say, negotiate with the U.S. when it comes to geopolitical and trade agreements?
First of all, sanctions had a very contradictory influence on the Russian economy. In one sphere, we had problems, but in agriculture, in production of machines for agriculture, in some other spheres of our economy, we had improvements and even economic growth. During these years, we first time had more or less real and sufficient economic growth in agriculture and production of agricultural technique. That's why I don't think that sanctions are an important factor of Russian stagnation. Main factor is terrible system of economic relations, institutions, and economic policy. I said that this is mixture of feudalism with oligarch bureaucratic capitalism, and this mixture is very inefficient, and the result is zero or -0 or +0 economic dynamic in our country. We have only hopes to have in 2017 +2%, but to overcome consequences of the long stagnation, we need to have 5-7% of growth, and we don't have hopes for such positive dynamic now. And again, main question here is not question of international relations. Main question is internal relations, economic system, which we have now in Russia.
Right. Now, Aleksandr, the famous investigative journalist and economist James Henry has been digging into the history of the relationship between Trump and the Russian oligarch. In fact, he has tracked several individuals that have actually helped Trump get out of the 5 different bankruptcies that he had declared at a time, you know, when the Trump towers all around the world were being sold or being abandoned as projects and so on, and how the Russian oligarchs actually bailed him out. So he has a number of financial connections to the oligarchs in Russia. Are you aware of these connections, and does the Russian media and economists studying these things aware of these connections?
In Russia, we do not have enough information on this topic, and this question is not discussed broadly. Only some fragments you can find in the internet and nothing more. Of course, Trump could have relations with Russian oligarchs, and this is not the question, because all billionaires has personal and business relations between themselves. There is 1,000 people who are billionaires in the world, and this is a small club, and of course they could have economic relations. This is not problem. This is not even challenge or question, because Trump policy will not be interconnected with personal connections with Russian oligarchs, and policy of Putin is not dependent from one or another personality. Trump is a representative of billionaires, of the class of billionaires of the United States, and not only of the United States. He is interconnected with the EU and so on. The same with Putin. Putin is representative of oligarchs and bureaucracy, top bureaucracy of our country, but not dependent from one or another personality.
All right, Professor Buzgalin, I thank you so much for joining us today, and look forward to having you back here on the Real News Network.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us here on the Real News Network.